The galaxy had once been a place of endless possibilities. Humans, a young and ambitious species, had only recently begun to venture beyond their home planet, Earth. They were discovering new worlds, making alliances with strange alien races, and learning more about the vastness of the cosmos. But everything changed when the galaxy suddenly grew cold. It started with the disappearance of stars. Entire star systems went dark, as if some unseen hand had wiped them from existence. No one knew where the light had gone. No one knew what force had caused the darkness. The once thriving galaxy now echoed with a quiet emptiness. The Wraiths, an ancient and mysterious alien race, were the ones responsible. They had arrived without warning, moving swiftly through the galaxy, extinguishing stars and swallowing entire worlds in their path. Their ship was a nightmare, a massive vessel capable of consuming light itself, leaving behind a vast and empty void. For most of the galaxy, this was the beginning of the end. The Wraith's cold, merciless march across the universe was unstoppable. The powerful empires, once rulers of entire star systems, had no answer to the Wraith's terrifying power. Desperation spread like wildfire, and many began to prepare for the inevitable. But not humanity. On Earth, a different kind of fire began to burn. People were frightened, yes, but they were also determined. They refused to let the coldness of space snuff out their future. The leaders of Earth came together, not in fear, but in defiance. They knew they were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They knew they were small in comparison to the ancient races that had dominated the stars for eons. But they also knew one thing: their resilience could not be underestimated. Commander Alex Ross, a decorated officer in the Earth Defense Forces, stood at the helm of this new resistance. He was not the kind of man to sit idly by as others fell. He had fought for Earth's survival in small local conflicts, but now the stakes were much higher. The galaxy had turned cold, and the universe needed a spark of warmth. Humanity was determined to be that spark. The Phoenix, the ship Ross commanded, was Earth's answer to the Wraiths. It was a ship built not just for war, but for hope. Designed by the brightest minds of humanity, it was fast, efficient, and capable of outsmarting even the most powerful foes. The Phoenix and its crew would be humanity's first strike against the Wraiths. It wasn't much compared to the vast, ruthless fleets the Wraiths controlled, but it was enough. They were willing to fight. They were willing to risk everything. Humanity might have been small, but they had one thing the galaxy didn't expect: hope. And that hope was about to set the galaxy on fire. The galaxy was growing darker, and yet Earth refused to give up. The Wraiths' relentless advance had crushed many civilizations, but humanity's will to survive burned brighter than ever. In the shadow of the stars, Commander Alex Ross and his crew were preparing to make their move. The Phoenix, a sleek and advanced warship, was humanity's symbol of defiance. It was not just a ship, it was a statement. With its speed and intelligence systems, it was built to do what no one thought possible: to strike back at the Wraiths. The ship was small compared to the Wraiths' massive war fleets, but it had something far more important: human ingenuity and determination. Commander Ross stood at the bridge, staring out at the dark void of space. It was hard to believe how far humanity had come. Just a few years ago, they had been a fledgling species, struggling to make their mark in the galaxy. Now, they were on the front lines of a battle that would decide the fate of the entire universe. The Wraiths had been unstoppable until now. But the humans weren't like the others. They were different. They didn't bow down to fear. "Commander, we've got a mission," said Lieutenant Kara Flynn, the tactical officer. She stood at her console, her fingers flying over the controls as she analyzed data on the screen. "We've pinpointed a weak spot in their defenses. If we act quickly, we can take out one of their motherships." Ross turned to face her, his eyes filled with resolve. "Then we'll do it. We don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect moment. The galaxy's already cold. It's time to light the fire." The crew of the Phoenix had come together as a family. They were a mix of human soldiers, engineers, and scientists, each one chosen for their unique skills. Though they came from different walks of life, they shared the same goal: to strike back at the Wraiths and show the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. As the Phoenix hurtled through space, approaching the Wraith mothership, tension filled the air. Every member of the crew knew the stakes. This mission was a gamble. If they failed, humanity's resistance would suffer a devastating blow. But if they succeeded, it would send a message to the galaxy, a message that the Wraiths were not invincible. The plan was simple but dangerous. They would infiltrate the Wraith mothership, disable its engines, and steal valuable data on how to defeat them. The mission was risky, but the team was ready. They had trained for this moment. With the Wraith ship in sight, Ross gave the command to launch. The Phoenix darted through the blackness, moving faster than the Wraiths could react. As they got closer, the crew prepared for the hardest part: boarding the mothership. Commander Ross's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just a raid. It was a turning point for humanity. If they succeeded, it would prove that the Wraiths could be beaten. It would prove that humanity could stand up to the darkness. The Phoenix silently attached to the enemy ship, and the crew began their mission. As they moved through the cold, metallic corridors of the Wraith mothership, the weight of the moment settled over them. They were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for the future of the galaxy. Humanity's spark had been lit. Now, it was time to see if it could burn bright enough to light the way for others. The raid on the Wraith mothership was a success, but the cost of victory had been high. The Phoenix had barely escaped the Wraith's counterattack, and several of the crew were injured. Commander Ross stood on the bridge of the ship, watching as Earth's distant stars flickered in the black void. Their mission had been a small victory, but it was one that proved humanity could strike back. Yet Ross knew they could not fight the Wraiths alone. They needed allies. The news of humanity's bold raid spread quickly across the galaxy. Other species, who had long been afraid to challenge the Wraiths, began to take notice of the humans' resilience. The galaxy was vast and filled with many different races, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. But they all shared one thing in common: their fear of the Wraiths. Now, humanity had shown that the Wraiths were not invincible, and that spark of hope was spreading like wildfire. Days after the mission, a message arrived for Ross. It was a call for a meeting with representatives from several alien races. Ross stood in front of a holographic display, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes narrowed as he read the message. The time had come to form alliances. "I knew this day would come," Ross said to Lieutenant Kara Flynn, who stood beside him. "The galaxy's been waiting for someone to take a stand. Now we need to give them a reason to join us." The first to arrive was the Telora, a species of telepathic aliens known for their intelligence and deep connection to the energy of the stars. Their leader, Commander Sarai, had heard about humanity's daring raid and was eager to discuss the possibility of joining forces. "We've been watching from the sidelines," Sarai said, her voice calm and steady. "The Wraiths have grown too powerful, too fast. We've been in hiding for too long. But your victory gives us hope. We are ready to lend our strength to your cause." Ross nodded, feeling a rush of gratitude. He had known the Telora were formidable, but having them on their side could change the tide of the war. However, the Wraiths were not the only threat in the galaxy. Many alien species feared what would happen if the Wraiths were defeated, as their own power might shift, and the balance of the galaxy might be forever altered. Next to arrive was the Zarnak, a warrior species known for their strength and fierce loyalty. Their leader, General Vorn, was an imposing figure, his deep voice carrying the weight of many battles fought. He crossed his arms and looked at Ross with a mixture of respect and suspicion. "You humans fight differently," Vorn said, his eyes narrowing. "You fight with a spirit we've never seen before. It's what makes you dangerous, but it's also what makes you allies worth having." Ross felt a rush of pride. Despite the differences between humans and the Zarnak, There was a shared understanding that made the alliance possible. The Zarnak were warriors, and humanity, though small, had proven they could stand beside them in battle. The final representative to arrive was from the Vril, a peaceful race of healers and scientists. They had remained neutral throughout the war, but the destruction of their homeworld had shaken their resolve. Their leader, Ambassador Lyra, stepped forward with a calm smile. "We have lost much to the Wraiths," Lyra said softly, "but your bravery has inspired us. We offer our knowledge, our technology, and our healing abilities. The fight is no longer just yours, Commander Ross. It is ours as well." With the Tulora, the Zarnak, and the Vrel now on their side, humanity had forged a powerful coalition. It was an alliance built not on fear, but on hope. They were no longer alone in the darkness. The galaxy had turned cold, but for the first time, humanity was not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future, for a future where hope could burn brightly once again. And together, they would make the fire of resistance burn even hotter. The Wraith's reign of terror had left a deep scar across the galaxy. Their dark ships moved from star to star, snuffing out entire worlds without mercy. But now, with humanity's spark of resistance lighting the way, the tides were beginning to turn. Commander Alex Ross and his newfound allies were ready to take the fight to the Wraiths. However, the war was far from over. The galaxy had entered a dangerous phase, a cold war. It wasn't a war of immediate battles, but a war of strategy, deception, and waiting. The Wraiths were not just an enemy to defeat. They were a force of nature, relentless and calculating. They understood the importance of patience, and so did humanity. They couldn't strike recklessly. Every move had to count. Every decision could change the fate of millions. Ross stood before the large holographic map of the galaxy in the command center of the Phoenix. His crew, now a mix of humans and alien allies, had gathered to discuss their next move. The room was filled with tension. Their success in the previous raid had proven that the Wraiths could be beaten, but the enemy was learning from their losses, adapting to the new threats. "We need to find their weak points," Ross said, his voice steady. "We hit them hard once, but they're going to come back stronger. We need to stay ahead of them, figure out where they're most vulnerable." Lieutenant Kara Flynn, the tactical officer, scrolled through the data collected during the raid. "The Wraiths rely on a vast network of starships that work together in perfect synchronization," she explained. "If we can disrupt that network, we can slow them down. But it won't be easy. They've learned to cover their tracks, hide their most valuable assets." Ambassador Lyra from the Vril, the peaceful yet brilliant scientists, stepped forward. "We've analyzed their technology, and we have some theories. The Wraith's power seems to be centralized in their main ships, but they've also placed hidden energy sources across the galaxy. We may be able to find one of these and destroy it, but we'll need to locate it first." Ross nodded. The Vrel had always been cautious in their approach, but their intellect and knowledge were invaluable. If anyone could find a way to disrupt the Wraith's hidden power, it would be them. General Vorn of the Zarnak, a seasoned warrior with a no-nonsense attitude, scowled at the map. "They hide in the shadows. They know how to play the long game. But we don't have the luxury of time. We need to strike them before they can regroup." Ross knew Vorn was right. The Wraiths were playing a game of attrition, waiting for the right moment to strike back. The resistance had gained ground, but that ground was fragile. The Cold War that had begun wasn't about waiting for the enemy to make a mistake. It was about outsmarting them at every turn. "Let's not forget what we've already done," Ross reminded them. "We've already shown the galaxy that we're not afraid to fight. We've already proven that the Wraiths can bleed. Now we need to push forward, build on that success. We don't stop now." The room fell silent for a moment. Humanity, once a fledgling species on the edge of the galaxy, had become the center of a galactic resistance. The Wraiths may have thought they could wipe them out, but humanity had shown them something far more dangerous: the will to survive. "The Cold War is only the beginning," Ross said, his eyes burning with determination. "But together, we will turn the tide. We will bring the heat." As the crew began to discuss their next steps, a quiet, unspoken bond grew between them. They were no longer just humans or aliens. They were a united force, a force that had the power to stop the Wraiths and rewrite the future of the galaxy. The Cold War had begun, but humanity's fire was just getting started. The galaxy was a vast and complex place, filled with countless species, each with their own history, culture, and way of life. For centuries, many had lived separately, focused on their own survival. But as the Wraiths grew stronger and their dark influence spread, the need for unity became clear. Humanity had sparked the flame of hope, and now that flame was beginning to light the way for the entire galaxy. Commander Ross stood before a gathered council of his alien allies. The Tellura, the Zarnak, and the Vrel had all come together under the banner of resistance. Once these species had never even considered working together. Their differences were too great, their histories too complicated, but the Wraiths had changed everything. Now, they were united by a common enemy and a common goal. The council chamber was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. It had been weeks since their last raid on the Wraith mothership, and the galaxy's situation was becoming even more desperate. The Wraiths were not retreating. They were regrouping, learning from their losses, and adapting. Humanity's victory was a single spark in the dark, but it needed fuel to become a true fire of resistance. "Now is the time," Ross said, his voice firm and steady. "We've shown the galaxy that we can strike back." But that was just one battle. The Wraiths are too powerful for us to do this alone. We need more. We need the galaxy's full support. Ambassador Lyra, the Vrel leader, nodded thoughtfully. "We are ready to offer more." The Vrel will lend their knowledge of advanced technology to help locate Wraith power sources across the galaxy. Our people have spent centuries studying the energy flows of the stars. We will find their weaknesses. Sarai, the Tellura commander, spoke next. "We will lend our telepathic abilities to coordinate efforts. Our mental connection with the stars allows us to track energy patterns unseen by most species. If the Wraiths hide their power, we will find it." General Vorn of the Zarnak, whose people were born warriors, clenched his fists in determination. "The Zarnak are ready for war. We've trained for generations for a battle like this. We will take the fight to the Wraiths. We will fight them wherever they are. We will bring the battle to their doorstep." Ross felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had come together, not just as allies, but as equals. The species of the galaxy, each so different, were now bound by a shared purpose. The Wraiths had divided them for too long, but now humanity's fire of resistance had forged an unbreakable bond. "Together, we will be unstoppable," Ross said, his voice filled with conviction. "The Wraiths may have thought they could crush us, but they didn't know what they were dealing with. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for the future of the galaxy. We're fighting for something greater than ourselves." For the first time in a long while, hope spread through the galaxy. Species that had once been divided were now united by a common cause. The flame of humanity's defiance had spread, and it had ignited something even greater. The Wraiths would no longer have the galaxy to themselves. The fight had only just begun. The council meeting ended with a sense of purpose, a shared understanding that they were now part of something much bigger than themselves. As Ross left the chamber, he looked up at the stars through the Phoenix's windows. The galaxy, once cold and dark, was now filled with the promise of a new dawn. Humanity had sparked the fire, and together with their allies, they would burn away the darkness. The Wraiths were an enigma, silent, destructive, and cold. Their ships seemed to appear out of nowhere, wiping out entire star systems in the blink of an eye. No one truly understood who or what the Wraiths were. They were a race of ancient power, and their motives remained a mystery. Yet the more humanity and its allies fought back, the more they began to uncover about the enemy. Commander Ross paced the bridge of the Phoenix, deep in thought. The raid on the Wraith mothership had provided them with valuable information, but it was only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. They had learned that the Wraiths were not just random destroyers. They were a calculated, intelligent force with a purpose. But what was that purpose? Lieutenant Kara Flynn, the tactical officer, sat at her console, scanning the data they had gathered. "We've been analyzing the Wraith's transmissions," she said, her fingers dancing over the controls. "It's not just random destruction. There's something they're after, something they need." Ross leaned over her shoulder, examining the screen. "What are we missing?" He muttered to himself. The data didn't make sense. The Wraiths had destroyed planets, but there was no clear pattern to their attacks. Why had they chosen to wipe out entire worlds and civilizations without taking anything of value? Suddenly, a breakthrough. The Vrel, using their advanced technology, had detected an unusual energy signature coming from one of the Wraith's hidden ships. It wasn't just raw power, it was something different. It was a signal. A call. Ambassador Lara's voice crackled through the comms. "Commander Ross, we've detected something. It appears the Wraiths are not only trying to destroy worlds. They are trying to gather energy from entire star systems. The signal we found is a type of beacon designed to draw power from the stars." Ross's heart skipped a beat. "They're not just wiping out civilizations," he said. "They're harvesting energy." But why? Sarai, the Telora leader, joined in from her station. "We believe the Wraiths are feeding off the energy they harvest. They have become parasitic in nature. But it is not just for sustenance. They are using the energy to fuel something. A weapon, perhaps. Something that could give them unimaginable power." Ross's mind raced. The Wraiths weren't just an invading force. They were preparing for something far worse. If they could feed off entire star systems and harness that power, what were they planning to do with it? "It's not just about survival for them," Ross said, his voice tight with realization. "The Wraiths are building something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. If we don't stop them, they'll be unstoppable." General Vorn's deep voice echoed through the comms. "We need to find the source of this power. If they're building a weapon, we can't let them finish it. We can't allow the Wraiths to have that kind of power." Ross stood tall, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The Wraiths had been cold and merciless, but now they were more dangerous than ever. The race to stop them had become even more urgent. The galaxy's fate depended on finding the truth behind the Wraiths' power. "We faced them before," Ross said, his voice filled with determination. "And we'll face them again. But this time, we'll have the knowledge to defeat them." The Phoenix and its crew had learned the first important lesson. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to uncover the Wraith's darkest secret, to stop the creation of a weapon that could destroy everything they had fought for. The true battle had only just begun, and humanity's spark of hope would be tested like never before. The galaxy was on edge. With each passing day, the Wraiths grew bolder, their dark influence spreading across the stars. But Commander Ross and his allies were determined. They had learned of the Wraiths' plan to harvest energy from entire star systems, using it to fuel a weapon that could tip the balance of power in their favor. The stakes had never been higher. The Phoenix was humanity's answer. The ship had become more than just a warship. It was a symbol of resistance, a beacon of hope in the cold darkness of space. Ross and his crew had already struck a major blow against the Wraiths, but now they were preparing for the final assault. This time, they weren't just going to fight. They were going to strike at the heart of the Wraith's power. The crew of the Phoenix was ready. Lieutenant Kara Flynn had been working tirelessly to pinpoint the location of the Wraith's power source. "We've found it," she said, her voice crackling over the comms. "There's a massive energy signature coming from a black hole at the edge of the galaxy. It's where the Wraiths have been gathering their energy." Ross felt a surge of determination. This was it, the Wraith's heart, the source of their power. If they could destroy this, they could break the Wraith's hold on the galaxy. "Prepare the ship for launch," Ross ordered. "This is our final push. We're going to end this." The crew moved quickly, each member taking their position. General Vorn and the Zarnak warriors were ready for battle. Sarai and the Telora would use their telepathic abilities to guide them through the Wraith's defenses, and Ambassador Lyra and the Vrel would provide their technological expertise to ensure the success of their mission. As the Phoenix surged forward, the cold void of space stretched out before them. The black hole loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel to the Wraith's power. Ross stood at the front of the ship, staring at the swirling mass of darkness. It was hard to believe that the fate of the galaxy rested on this one mission. But he knew they had no choice. If they failed, the galaxy would fall into eternal darkness. The Phoenix cut through the darkness, approaching the black hole with speed and precision. The Wraith's forces were already preparing for battle, their ships converging on their location. Ross's mind raced, but he stayed focused. This was the moment they had been waiting for. "Steady," Ross said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We've come too far to turn back now." As they neared the black hole, the Phoenix's sensors picked up the Wraith's massive fortress, hidden in the folds of space. It was a labyrinth of ships and energy shields, but they had a plan. They had to disable the Wraith's power source, the heart of their weapon, before the Wraiths could react. "We're in position," Kara Flynn called out. "Now or never." With a deep breath, Ross gave the order. "Target the core. All systems, prepare to fire." The Phoenix unleashed a barrage of energy at the heart of the Wraith fortress, a powerful strike designed to cripple their power. The explosion was deafening, a burst of light that pierced through the cold blackness of space. The Wraith's defenses faltered, their ships breaking apart as their power source was destroyed. For a moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The Wraiths had been dealt a devastating blow, their weapon destroyed, their hold on the galaxy shattered. The Phoenix had risen, and with it, hope for the galaxy. The Resistance had won, but the war was far from over. Commander Ross and his crew knew that their fight was only beginning. But for the first time, they felt the weight of victory, and with it, the belief that they could change the future of the galaxy forever. The destruction of the Wraith's power source was a victory unlike any other. The galaxy had watched as humanity and their allies delivered a devastating blow to the heart of the Wraith's plans. But Commander Ross knew that the fight wasn't over. The Wraiths were not a race to be defeated so easily. They were relentless, and now they were angry. In the days following the destruction of their fortress, the Wraiths had been silent. There was a stillness in the galaxy that was almost too quiet. Ross knew that silence was dangerous. The Wraiths would not take this blow lightly. They would come, and when they did, they would strike with everything they had left. The Phoenix was in orbit above a small, quiet moon at the edge of the galaxy. Ross had ordered the crew to rest, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the Wraiths arrived. And when they did, humanity and its allies had to be ready for the final confrontation. This would be their last stand. The crew gathered in the briefing room, their faces set with determination. General Vorn stood at the front, his fists clenched. "The Wraiths are coming," he said, his voice low and filled with strength. "They've lost their weapon, but they still have their fleets. They'll come for us, and when they do, we'll show them that humanity is not to be underestimated." Ambassador Lyra, always calm, spoke next. "The Vrel will use their technology to track their movements. We'll know when they're close, but we need to be prepared for a battle unlike anything we've seen before." Sarai, the Telora commander, added, "We will use our telepathic connection to warn you of any hidden threats. Together, we can anticipate their moves." Kara Flynn, the tactical officer, moved to the console. "We've adjusted our strategies based on the data we've gathered. The Wraith ships are formidable, but they're not invincible. If we can hit them where it hurts, we can end this war." Ross nodded, feeling the deep sense of responsibility. The galaxy's fate rested on their shoulders, but he had faith in his crew. They had already defied the odds once. Now, they would do it again. "Remember, this isn't just about fighting the Wraiths," Ross said, his voice steady. "It's about showing the galaxy that we will never surrender. We will never give up. We're fighting for the future, for every race, for every species that believes in freedom." The crew exchanged nods, understanding the gravity of their mission. The Wraiths were coming, but they were not the same enemy they had been before. Humanity had shown them that even in the darkest of times, there was always a spark of hope. The Phoenix moved into position, its engines humming softly. The stars outside the windows were distant and cold, but inside the ship there was a fire burning in each of the crew members. It was the fire of defiance, of unity, and of a belief that no matter how cold the galaxy grew, humanity would stand tall. The Wraith ships appeared on the horizon, their dark forms looming like a storm. They had come, just as Ross had expected. But humanity was ready. The final battle had begun. Ross stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. "This is it," he said quietly. "Let's finish this." The Phoenix shot forward, its weapons powered up and ready. The final stand had begun, and humanity's fire would burn brighter than ever before. The final battle had begun, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The Wraith's fleets, vast and menacing, appeared on the horizon. Their ships glowed with dark energy, a stark contrast to the shining stars that dotted the sky. Humanity's allies, Flora, Zarnak, and Vrel, joined the Phoenix in formation, ready to face their greatest challenge yet. The fight that would decide the future of the galaxy was now unavoidable. Commander Ross stood at the helm of the Phoenix, staring at the incoming Wraith ships. The crew was in place, every member prepared to face their fate. There was no turning back. If they lost this battle, everything they had fought for would be destroyed. But Ross knew they had something the Wraiths didn't: hope, unity, and the unwavering belief that they could win. "We've trained for this moment," Ross said to his crew, his voice firm and steady. "Today, we fight for every planet, every race, and every life. We fight for the future, and we fight together." General Vorn nodded, gripping the control panel. "The Zarnak are ready. We'll strike hard and fast." Sarai, the Telora commander, closed her eyes, focusing on the galaxy's energy. "We'll guide you through their ships. We can anticipate their moves before they make them." Ambassador Lyra from the Vrel stepped forward. "We've made adjustments to our weapons. Our technology will make sure our strikes hit where it counts. We'll give you the edge you need." The Phoenix shuddered as its engines powered up, the ship moving with swift precision. The crew worked in perfect harmony, a well-oiled machine ready for battle. As the Wraith ships closed in, Ross's grip tightened on the control panel. The tension was thick in the air, but there was no fear, only focus. Cara Flynn's voice came over the comms, breaking the silence. "Commander, they're locking on to our coordinates. They know we're here." Ross nodded. "Get ready, everyone. They'll come at us with everything they've got." The first wave of Wraith ships opened fire, their energy blasts streaking toward the Phoenix and its allies. The battle erupted in an instant. The Phoenix dodged and weaved through enemy fire, its weapons responding with a fierce intensity. The Telora and Zarnak ships flanked the Wraiths, launching coordinated attacks, while the Vrel's advanced technology provided crucial support, targeting weak points in the enemy's defenses. The Phoenix moved like a living creature, its crew working together as one. Cara Flynn maneuvered the ship expertly, avoiding the Wraith's heavy fire while returning powerful shots of their own. General Vorn led the Zarnak warriors in a charge, cutting through the Wraith forces with ruthless precision. Saray's telepathic abilities guided their every move, warning them of incoming attacks and helping them strike at the Wraith's most vulnerable points. But the Wraiths were relentless. They were a force of nature, built for destruction. Their ships came at them in waves, overwhelming the Phoenix with sheer numbers. Ross watched as the enemy ships regrouped, preparing for their next assault. But he could feel it. The momentum was shifting. The Wraiths were losing their grip. The tide of battle turned when the Phoenix struck a critical blow. With a precise shot, the crew hit the core of the Wraith flagship, sending a shockwave through the enemy fleet. The Wraiths faltered. Their ships scattered, and their once coordinated assault became chaotic. It was the opening the Resistance had been waiting for. "This is it," Ross shouted. "Push forward. Finish it." The Phoenix surged forward, and with one final, devastating strike, they tore through the heart of the Wraith's command ship. The explosion was massive, lighting up the dark expanse of space like a star being born. For a moment, there was silence. The Wraith's fleets, once a terrifying force, were now scattered and in retreat. The galaxy's greatest threat had been defeated. The crew of the Phoenix stood together, their hearts racing, but their faces filled with triumph. They had won. Against all odds, humanity and its allies had turned the tide of the war. Commander Ross looked out at the stars, feeling the weight of the moment. They had not just survived. They had conquered. The galaxy was free. And for the first time in ages, there was light in the darkness. The Wraiths had been defeated, and a new dawn had arrived for the galaxy. The galaxy was still, but it was a stillness full of hope. The Wraiths, once a terrifying force, had been driven back. Their fleets, shattered and broken, had retreated into the cold reaches of space. For the first time in years, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if they too were celebrating the victory of those who had fought for them. Commander Ross stood at the bridge of the Phoenix, staring out at the endless expanse of space. The battle was over, but the war had changed everything. Humanity, along with its allies, had proven that even in the darkest times, they could rise up and fight back. The Wraiths were defeated, but the galaxy was not yet at peace. There was much work to do, much healing to be done. "You did it, Commander," Lieutenant Kara Flynn said softly, standing beside him. Her eyes were tired, but there was a quiet pride in her voice. "We did it." Ross nodded but didn't say anything for a moment. The weight of the victory felt heavy, but it was not a burden. It was a relief. They had fought for something more than survival. They had fought for a future. "It's not over yet," Ross said finally, his voice steady but filled with determination. "The galaxy needs us now more than ever. We have a lot of rebuilding to do. The Wraiths may be gone, but there are others who will try to take their place. We must remain strong." As he spoke, General Vorn of the Zarnak entered the bridge, his massive frame imposing even in the quiet aftermath of the battle. "You're right, Commander," Vorn said, his voice filled with the certainty of a warrior who had seen too many wars. "There will always be those who seek to conquer, to destroy. But today we've shown them that the galaxy will not fall easily. We will stand together." Ross looked at the Zarnak warrior, then at the faces of his crew. Human, Tulora, Zarnak, and Vrel. The diversity of his team had been their strength. They were different, but together, they had overcome the Wraiths. "We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore," Ross said, his voice firm. "We're fighting for everyone. For every species that believes in freedom, in peace, in the future. We've proven that no one is too small to make a difference." The room fell silent as the crew absorbed his words. The Phoenix had become more than just a ship. It had become a symbol of humanity's courage, its resilience, and its unwillingness to give up. It had started with a single spark of hope, and now that spark had turned into a flame that could never be extinguished. Ambassador Lyra of the Vrel stepped forward, her calm presence soothing the air. "We must rebuild the alliances we formed, strengthen our bonds with each other. The galaxy is vast, and though we have won this battle, the journey ahead will be long." Sarai, the Telora commander, nodded. "But we face it together, and that is a strength no enemy can defeat." Ross looked out at the stars again. The galaxy had been dark, but now it was full of possibilities. They had a future to build, and it was one where they would stand side by side, stronger than ever. "Let's make sure the future is a bright one," Ross said, his voice filled with hope and conviction. The crew of the Phoenix turned to their stations, ready for the work ahead. The galaxy had been scared by the wraiths, but it was not broken. Humanity had shown that even in the coldest of times, there was always room for light. And so, a new beginning was born. The galaxy had been given a second chance, and humanity, along with its allies, would ensure that it was a future worth fighting for.